be a lesson to you kids. Okay. Take 6.
Tim, what happens in Vegas?
What happens in Vegas? Well, I imagine it's different for a lot of people. But for me, the first time I came to Vegas, I think I was 23 years old. I wanted to come here for my birthday because I was amazed at the fact that the largest pyramid in the world was in Las Vegas. It was the Luxor, which also had the brightest light in the world, which could be seen from space. And I had heard a lot about it and I wanted to see, and I quickly found out that basically Vegas is all about excess, which can be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on how much you can control yourself. But so for me, it was always this place where I could go and just do whatever I wanted, be myself, take it to 11, meet with friends from all over the country. And that was what it really became about. It was like it was a place, still is a place for me to meet up with my good friends and just have fun, do whatever we want. We don't get too crazy, especially these days. I'm an ancient man. But it was just, let's go lay by the pool, have a drink. Let's go dancing. Let's go to a great dinner. Let's go see the Love show at the Mirage 3 times because it's great. You know, it was just like a playground. It was, you can do whatever you want. And I think that's why people really like it. People of all ages, I mean, and all types. You see them all in Vegas. Everyone comes to Vegas. And I think that's really special because I've traveled all over the world, but I've probably traveled to Vegas more than any other city in the world because there's always something happening here. I've come here for work. I lived here once for a month in Mandalay Bay in a hotel. I've never done that in my life. I was here for a McDonald's convention. A week of prep and then 3 weeks of shooting or doing this like convention where it was like, okay, there's 3,000 McDonald's managers from the West Coast and they're all here to have a show. There's a magician, there's a band. The ballroom is so big there, we had segways to drive around it. It would take you like 10 minutes to walk from one side to the other. I'm living in a hotel with a cooler full of like ham and cheese and mustard and beer and whiskey. And we just lived on the cheap in this hotel room. And we were in Vegas for so long because usually I would always say like, you never really need to be in Vegas more than 2 nights. After that, you're done. Especially with the dry air. But also you usually just, you've had enough fun by then. You don't want to get too old and you leave. So a month, I mean, it was crazy. A month living in a hotel. I mean, I would walk to work. The walk from my hotel room to work, all of it was in Mandalay Bay, was 2 miles. And I would walk through the gambling floor at 6, 7 in the morning. And there'd always be like some old woman or old man chain smoking, playing some card game. And you're just like, there are just people who are here all the time. Gambling. They just love it. Even if it looks like they're not having any fun at all, which they rarely look like they are. And I really got to feel for like the people that work in Las Vegas. Like the I don't know what you'd call them. I guess like the staff, the like behind the scenes stage hands or whatever that are like keeping this dream alive for people every day, and like it must be exhausting. But there's also, I think Las Vegas is the place where you get the best service in the whole world, because it's a place that thrives on money and excess and tips, and they're winning, they're giving you tips, they're winning, they're giving you chips. You take their car, you're a valet, they give you $20. Like, money really makes it move. Everyone's happy, everyone's smiling. So there's just this real energy that I think people love, that I love.
How old were you again? What year was this?
I think I was 23, which would mean it was, I don't know, maybe I wasn't 23. 2001? Doesn't sound right. I think it was probably 2003, so I was probably 25.
And throughout these years, how much has it changed?
I mean, it's changed a lot. It's changed a lot. For example, we always used to go to the Mirage. My good friend's stepdad is a high roller at the Mirage, which was kind of my first real window into Vegas. I came out here, I moved to LA from Chicago. My friend from Chicago said, "Hey, meet me in Las Vegas. Don't worry, you won't need to spend $1." I didn't know how that was true. I drove out here. I had no money. I probably had $30 in the bank. I pulled up to the Mirage. I parked. I went in. I met them at the restaurant, sat down, just as this huge seafood tower was dropped down on the table. And I was like, I'm not going to be able to pay for my part of this dinner. You know, it's like, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I'm like, what do you mean don't worry about it? And it turned out we had this, I don't even know, $5,000 dinner, $3,000 dinner. It was comped by the hotel. There were like 6 of us. There was wine, there was steaks and fish and dessert, and that's when I learned about his stepdad being a high roller and what that would get you, right? So that night I met one of my best friends, because he's a friend of my friend from Chicago. I met him in Las Vegas. The 3 of us would meet in Las Vegas maybe 3 times a year, and we would just have fun. Our rooms were free. We would go to a nightclub. We would drink $400 bottles of champagne, and none of us had any money. I mean, I was probably making like $30,000 a year. And one night, I think our bar tab was $15,000 comped.
How did that make you feel in the beginning?
Uncomfortable.
Uncomfortable because of your friends or the excess?
No, I mean more just because I couldn't afford it. I couldn't pay for it. So I felt strange about taking it or doing it, you know? But it's amazing how quickly it changed, like how quickly we adapt as people. The first night, we went to a club, we got a bottle of champagne. We kind of couldn't believe it was free. It was almost like we wanted to see if we could get away with it, right? The next night we went there. By the end of the night, I remember turning to our waitress, who was this beautiful woman in like a ball gown. And I said, when you see this bottle of champagne, which was like Dom Perignon 1996, when you see it turned over in the bucket, just bring another one. Like, I don't want to have to wait for you to come over and ask if we need anything, and then we order one. Like, if you see from across the room that it's turned over, just bring us another one. Like, keep it coming, you know. $400 bottles of champagne. You know,
So
I was probably making $400 a week.
nice. Yeah, tell me about pizza.
So, we're having some pizza right now. Pizza's my favorite food. Interestingly enough, this may be one of my first pizzas I've ever had in Las Vegas. Because every time I'm here, what I usually do is I eat seafood. Or steak, but usually seafood. Which is pretty ironic to come to the desert to eat seafood. But what I learned here, because Las Vegas is really where, paradoxically, I learned to like seafood. Growing up in Chicago with my family that doesn't eat seafood, I never had it, was never really exposed to it. When I was in Las Vegas at these like fancy dinners I couldn't afford and we're eating all this really great seafood, I was like, oh, I actually really like this. And so I really came to love coming to Las Vegas and just having like these amazing shrimp and lobsters and king crab legs and, you know, beautiful fillets of fish. And I learned that, like, actually, where you get the best seafood is where people are willing to pay for it. If you think about all the seafood that's caught in the world and then flown to Tokyo to be sold in the fish market and then flown all around the world to whoever bought it, it doesn't matter if you're on a coast, it doesn't matter if you're in a big city. Whoever's willing to pay for it gets it flown straight to them and it's served to you fresh. And so I still to this day always come to Las Vegas and have an amazing seafood dinner, so, at least once, because that's what I love about Las Vegas is I can sit down, order unbelievable food, and it's always great. But the pizza's good too.
You might know a thing or two about restaurants, the restaurants in Las Vegas and the chefs in Las Vegas. What's the difference? What can you find?
I mean, in general, I would say there's great food in Vegas, but it's definitely overpriced. There's it's like celebrity chef kind of gone wrong, I think, because there's so much money. Like I've gone to really every good restaurant in Las Vegas now for over 20 years. And what I find myself gravitating toward are not the what's the new restaurant, what's the most expensive restaurant, oh, so-and-so has a new restaurant. And I try to find more of the like classic spots. Not necessarily like, oh, this is the steakhouse that Sinatra went to, but more like my favorite place to go to really is probably Vic and Anthony's, which is a steakhouse in the Golden Nugget downtown. Very few people know about it. No one ever used to go downtown. It's had a little bit of a revival in the post-Zappos era, where they really reinvigorated downtown, added some cocktail bars, there's new hotels there. But still, like, no one goes to Vic and Anthony's. No one even knows it's there. It's just an old school steakhouse. You get a martini, you get a steak, you get some fish. You're good. You're not like going to some place where it's like, it's 2 ounces of Japanese Wagyu on a plate with 2 dots of sauce. And it's $85, $150, whatever, you know. There's a lot of it that's like performance showy these days that wasn't always that way. Because I remember going to a restaurant at Mandalay Bay where it's not there anymore, but they built this huge wine cellar, glass-walled. We went there actually together. um, where they would have wine angels that would go up on like these ropes and fetch the bottle of wine and then come down. It was like they were like almost like bungee jumping or something. And I remember I had a really good gazpacho there where they served it in a chunk of ice where they carved out a little bowl and put the gazpacho in it. And it was like the best gazpacho I've ever had. Again, in Las Vegas. Strange. Um, I think at that time, the restaurants here, like I really liked them when they were like expensive and creative and cutting edge. I think now it's gone a little too extreme. Um, but who knows? Like the restaurants change constantly. Vegas is always changing, transforming itself. You know, it's for adults, it's for kids, it's for everyone. It's about gambling, it's about food, it's about shows, it's about restaurants, it's about pools and pool clubs, and you know they're always trying to find a way to get people to come here. And I feel like it's in a good place right now where there's like really good restaurants, good shows, great pools and hotels, and people really just come here to like relax, unwind, get spoiled, have some luxury, have really good service, and kind of feel like they can do whatever they want to do. They can get a little wild, or they can just get a massage and lay by the pool and get a margarita. And so it's kind of something for everybody. And I think that's why everyone loves to come here and you know, hang out together with friends. Yeah, I mean, toppings. I've never vented about this to anybody, but I will to you. Let's say it's like $3 for a topping. The topping can be pepperoni or onions. Come on. Or garlic. You're going to charge $3 to put some onions on there, or some spinach, or some garlic, but also only $3 for a bunch of pepperoni. Like, all ingredients don't cost the same. So if you want a pizza the way that I would, like a Chicago person like me, gets a lot of toppings on a pizza. Gets a lot of toppings on a hot dog or whatever. You know, it's all about just like some vegetables, some meat, some onions, some garlic. You wind up paying like $25 for toppings. So they can throw a handful of garlic and spinach and onions on a pizza. You know, it's just ridiculous. I guess we're just not used to people ordering so many toppings.
You've been to Italy. How would you compare the pizza over there from the pizza you grew up?
Oh, it's very different. I mean, but that's the great thing about pizza. There's just so many ways you can make pizza. So in Chicago, I mean, there's your kind of like hand tossed New York style pizza. There's your Chicago like tavern style, super thin crust, cut in squares, which is one of my favorites. There's the deep dish, which everyone from New York loves to say isn't really pizza. Of course, it's pizza. It's just a different kind of pizza. Just like a New York style pizza is different from a Neapolitan style pizza, which is incredible. I like to make that one. I make it at home. Um, and I mean that like everything in Italy I feel like is more of like a celebration of the ingredients, right? It's like 00 flour, great olive oil, some good yeast, a little salt, and you make a dough, you let it ferment a little bit and get all bubbly. You roll it out, you put some, you know, tomatoes from Sicily, you put a little bit of buffalo mozzarella, a little bit of, you know, pepperoni, whatever you want, basil, and it's just like this beautiful, delicious, light. It doesn't even feel like bad for you, you know, it feels just like this fresh, beautiful thing. In America, we definitely gravitate a little more towards just like heavy on the cheese, greasy, big, covered in meat pizzas, but those are good too. It's like whatever you're in the mood for. So what I love about the resurgence lately of Neapolitan style pizza in America is that you can kind of just get whatever you want now. Get a Neapolitan style pizza, get a deep dish pizza, get a Detroit style pizza, get a tavern style pizza. You have your choice. What are you in the mood for? And I think they're all pizza, and they're all good. And it's just about what you're in the mood for. Love good food. I travel for good food and wine. That's where I go places. And why I'm not a fan of just going to a beach somewhere. I want to go somewhere where they make good food and have good wine. I love going to wine country in Chile, in Argentina, in Spain, in Italy, Australia, Get ye to the wine country. It's the most beautiful because it's usually between the water and the mountains. And it's like a place where there's like luxury farmers, salt of the earth people that just happen to make, internationally appreciated wine. So, yeah. Or I went to Sicily. The only reason I went to Sicily was to go to a bakery, Cafe Sicilia, because I saw a Netflix episode about the pastry chef that runs that place. It was like third generation, I think, and it was so incredible. We went there, and we went to Noto in Sicily. And I think we were there for 3 nights, and we went to that place 5 times. As soon as we got there, they were still open, and we went in for a scoop of gelato. Best gelato I've ever had. I was there with Mark and Saul. Saul and I went in and got gelato. Mark didn't kind of get it yet, so he didn't go in, as I recall. And it was so good. Then we went back for breakfast. And we had the almond granita, which I had never had granita before, but it was incredible. So was the brioche bun it comes with. So was the coffee. Or like a cappuccino made with their own homemade almond milk. Like, it was incredible. So, and then we went back again the next day for breakfast, and then we went back that afternoon because we realized they also had a bar, and we sat and had a martini on the porch, and it was great. And then after that, we went to a very lavish meal where I picked out a fish this big, and Mark and I split it, and then had all this pasta and desserts and wines. Saul had a steak that was so big, no one on the wait staff thought he could actually eat it. And they thought he was making a mistake when he said he wanted it. And they brought it out to him and showed it to him, and he was like, yes, yes. And he's like, yes, all for me. And they made him this huge steak. And of course he ate the whole thing, because Saul just he eats his steak, I don't think anyone could believe the spectacle we made in that restaurant that night, That was just like one night on our trip. We bought everything. We had bottles of wine, everyone's looking over like they're sharing a pasta and maybe got a glass of wine, and we're just like, bring it. Let's taste this rainbow, Every time. We lived like kings. It was a really fun trip. And it was all based around just going there for food.
When did you first start to develop this appreciation for travel and food and?
I've always been curious, and I think people who travel are curious people. They want to see, we want to see what it's like. You want to feel it for yourself. You want to see something for yourself because you're curious about it. And my dad traveled a lot for work, so there's probably a little inspiration there too. My senior year of high school, I paid some money that I saved up from caddying. I was a caddy for 10 years in the Chicago suburbs. Started when I was 12 years old. It's my first real job, although I'd been making money before that. Raking leaves, mowing lawns, shoveling snow. 10, $15 will shovel your sidewalk. I stood outside of the grocery store in my town for hours and hours a day selling candy bars to raise money for Cub Scouts, and then went door to door to every single house in the town I grew up in. And I sold more candy bars than anyone else, and that's how I made my first $125, because I got a cut of every candy bar I sold. A very tiny cut. But so that kind of got me made me hungry, I guess, for like, if I can get creative, if I'm gonna work hard, I can get out there and hustle and make some money.
So at that age, what were your thoughts about money when you were saving it? While you were saving it?
I just wanted to pile it up. I mean, I was 12 years old. It'd be 3 o'clock in the morning, and my alarm goes off, and I get up, and I put on my uniform, and I get on my bike, and I ride in the pitch black night down these busy roads during the day, but no cars at night. And I'm riding my bike down the middle of like a 4-lane road where cars would go 50 miles an hour. No cars, riding down the middle of it. 12 years old, 3 a.m., going to work. And I rode my bike several miles up down this long driveway up a hill, got to the caddy shack, wrote my number down in pencil on a piece of paper, and then laid on a hard wooden bench and tried to nap a little bit because I had to get there first. But the golfers weren't there yet. It was too early. But when the first golfer showed up, I got it. And I get out there and I would carry a golf bag for some Chicago stockbroker, commodities trader, generational wealth kind of place. Like this place hosted the 1901 U.S. Open, and then stopped having U.S. Opens because they didn't have enough parking and didn't want to like ruin the character of their club. Beautiful place. And I worked there for like 10 years, just every day, getting there as early as I could, getting out there carrying golf bags and getting paid cash. In the beginning, it was I think $12.50 that I would make to wait around until I work and then work for 4 hours and then, $12. I was getting paid like $3 an hour, not even. And I also, while I'm waiting to go carry the golf bags, I learned how to play spades because everyone's sitting around just playing cards. You're playing cards, you're playing basketball, you're playing ping pong. So I played a lot of cards and learned a lot of like trick basketball shots, like left-handed, one-hand, three-pointers. Because I couldn't dunk, and we'd be playing these like elaborate games of tip horse, which is the whole thing, but I wasn't the best basketball player, but I had to develop these trick shots that no one could do because it was all I could do. And I learned how to play spades, which was a lot of fun. And I learned how to golf. On Mondays we could golf. It was this whole chunk of my life. It was 10 years. And it feels so long ago, but it was like just going to work and working and being a man when I was 12 years old. Because I wanted to. Because I love the feeling of like getting money and putting it away. And getting more of it and putting it away, you know.
Where do you think that drive, that motivation came from?
I don't know. Because I don't really feel like my parents are that way. I guess maybe it stems from the curiosity, let's say, where I knew I was going to need money to like travel, to see places. I knew I needed money for a house, and I don't know, I just really wanted money. I don't even know if I really knew why, but when I was a kid and someone asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, I would say I wanted to be a CEO. Because I would always read the entire paper, but I really loved the business section and like reading the stories about all these people, and they'd show like a house that a CEO had or whatever, and I'd be like, a $20 million house on 1,000 acres or whatever. I'm like, God, that sounds nice. Like, I think I just kind of always had a desire for the good life, and I knew it was going to take a lot of money to get there. But I didn't even know what the good life was. I just think I want it. I want that. I want to know what that's like, but I don't know what it is. But I still feel like I wanted it.
Yeah, but I wonder, working as a caddy, your experience, how did they treat you? Did you see, from where you come from, grew up, a difference between classes? Like, were these like really rich people, and that influence, like you got a lot of information from them?
I mean, that probably was a big contributing factor. Having that window into wealth, you know, that I had never seen before. Just like, I was definitely a servant, you know. Some people weren't that okay with that feeling. I think my older brother wasn't okay with that. Like, he didn't want to be a servant. And he quit caddying. Some other people, I think, struggled with it. I was okay with it, I guess, mostly just because it was kind of, I guess I just thought, like, there's money to be made here. You know, I'm going to make it. I couldn't work anywhere else. I'm 12 years old, 13 years old, 14 years old. You can't work anywhere. I don't even think it was legal, you know. But, I mean, I would, you know, I'd be like carrying a golf bag for a wife. Every Sunday, the husband and the wife would golf with another husband and a wife. It was mixed doubles. And a lot of times the guys would go early in the morning on Sunday and golf with their friends, go back, eat lunch, and then go out with their wives in the afternoon. And I don't think there was ever a good relationship. So I would be caddying for the wife or the husband, or later when I was bigger, I would carry 2 bags and I'd have the wife and the husband that I'm working for, handing them clubs, telling them what to do, telling them the distance, following their ball, reading the greens for them to putt, and like being a really nice servant and like, you know, kind of sucking up to them a little bit, but not too much, just being very polite. And you always just hope you get tipped at the end because your performance was so exceptional and you were such a gentleman, you know, because it's just like, I want that extra money, you know.
What was the best tip you ever got?
I think one time a guy gave me $100 bill. That blew me away. I don't even know if I had seen a $100 bill before that. was like, okay.
Victorious day.
Oh, yeah. I'd go and put it in the bank.
Did you have a plan? What you were going to do with all this money?
Go to college. Because here, of course, you have to pay for it. So, it's just like, I'm going to need a lot of money for college. I need to start making some money.
So you didn't get a loan? Student loan?
No, I did. I mean, it was a combination of things. There were some grants, some loans. I paid some money. My parents paid some money. And, that made it work. And luckily, this was before it really skyrocketed. My freshman year of college, I think the tuition was $18,000. The next year, they raised it to $24,000. But I was grandfathered in at a lower rate. But they just started raising money, and the reasoning was they wanted to get higher up in the U.S. News and World Report ranking of colleges. And one of the criterion was like, how much do kids pay for tuition? Like, in other words, like, how desirable is it to go there? Will people pay anything? Will they pay more to go to your school than someone else's school? And they just would raise their tuition to match Harvard's. They didn't need the money. They didn't, it was just like, well, we want to make it higher so that people think we're good. Because they're always bad. In Chicago, where I went to school, it's called the second city. The first city being New York, right? We're always like pitching ourselves as the underdogs. Like, well, we're just the second city, there's New York, but those guys, Like, we always have a grudge on or like a bone to pick or something, chip on our shoulder, or like kind of being like, well, yeah, we're good too, we're pretty good. My name is Tim Malooly. I grew up in Chicago, Illinois, just outside in the suburbs. I've family of 4 kids. Me, an older brother, little sister. My parents are still together and still in love, which is pretty rare. And I grew up in the 80s. And the 90s, and the aughts, and the teens, and now the 20s. I've seen a lot. I've traveled the world. I've been to every continent but Antarctica. I'm a curious man. And I guess that's all you need to know about me. I graduated college. My girlfriend had broken up with me. I decided I wanted to move to Australia because it was a faraway place where I could be alone, and somewhere I'd always wanted to go to, and why not go now when I'm all alone, So I got a work permit. And I worked all summer. I caddied. That was my last summer at the golf course. And I went to Australia. Spent a month in Melbourne. Bought a Greyhound bus ticket that went in a circle. You could go one way in a circle and get off whenever you want. And so I would just get off in some little town, and there'd be guys with a sandwich board, like $13 a night, free breakfast, $1 an hour internet, And I'd pick a van and go and check into some hostel and share a room with, 3 to 5 other guys. And just hung out, read books, Tried to learn how to surf. Was terrible at it. Almost died. I worked on a banana farm because I ran out of money, and so I got a job. I went to a hostel in Mission Beach in Queensland, and it was a hostel where farmers would call and say, "I need a worker." You know, have them ready outside at 3:30 in the morning. And the farmer wanted me there because he needed a guy, and I was the guy. And he pulled up outside in a pickup truck with another guy inside and a dog in the back. Didn't say a word and just pointed, so I just like jumped in the back of this pickup truck with some dog and two guys I don't know. And we just drove off into the middle of the rainforest. Right? And I'm like, let's see what happens, right? I've never worked on a farm in my life. I hope these guys aren't going to kill me. You know, like, we get to this place, I get at, they don't say a word. The farmer didn't say a word to me for a week. He would just look at me, you know, and just like, and then he would do something. And then I'd be like, oh, I guess I should do that too. And I'm like copying him. Then he would just kind of show me what he wanted me to do, but he didn't say a word. We both speak English, right? He was just so, I don't know, stern that like he was just kind of like, I don't know about this guy, because like no one really likes Americans. When I was in college, I went and spent a summer in England where I got a work permit to work. And I worked as a data inputter at an insurance company in England when I was 19 years old. Everyone hated me just because I was an American. Like, they liked me, but they were always like, but you're a Yank. You know, like even though they liked me and we hung out, they would always be like, but you're a Yank. You know, like... And in Australia, it's like, just a Yank. You know, I always had a lot to prove. To be like, no, I'm not some dumbass American guy. And I made some friends there and like traveled around. Worked at that banana farm, used some of the money to then learn how to scuba dive. And I lived on a boat on the Great Barrier Reef for like 4 or 5 nights. Learned how to scuba dive and got my advanced open water certification. And I was like, because I graduated from Northwestern with a degree in radio, TV, film. You know, like I was still trying to think what I wanted to do with my life, and I'm like, do I want to just keep scuba diving and like become a rescue diver and do that? And then I'm like, I don't like the water that much. I have motion sickness, not that great on boats. Maybe I should stay away from the water. But I do think it's an amazing thing to be able to be down there, weightless, floating in the middle of the water and just becoming part of the scenery. And then you see the fish. All of a sudden, they're everywhere because they just think you're like a rock, you know. And you see them above you, and you know you swim through them, and it was just an amazing thing that I'd never done. I mean, none of my parents. My dad can't even swim; he just sinks to the bottom of the pool. So, I kind of discovered the water there. And I also started cliff diving, which was the whole thing that I can't believe I did it and didn't die. Just jumping off all these cliffs in the middle of this, like, the Northern Territory, where there's these little waterfalls that have been pouring into a rock for like 10,000 years or 20,000 years. And so it's like you know, this wide, but maybe it's 800 feet deep. Like, you don't know how deep it is. It's been dripping for 20,000 years. And there was this girl who was like, let's jump, you know? And I'm like, all right, you first. Right? Like, I'm not gonna break my face open down there. Like, you think this is a good idea? You're into it? I'll follow you, right? Not that gentlemanly, I guess, but she jumped.
How high was it again?
It depended on the place. I mean, we would do it like 5 or 10 times a day for like 4 days, 5 days. We'd pull over. It's hot as hell. You know, it's like 120 degrees in the middle of the desert. It's like, well, here's a watering hole. This ancient, like, little waterfall. Like, let's go for a swim and cool off. You know, we'd do that like a few times a day. And it was always like, let's go up there and jump. You know, and so maybe it was like 15 feet, 20 feet, 30 feet, 40 feet, 50 feet, you know, like some of them were pretty high into these little pools, you know. So she'd jump, she'd come back up to the surface, and I'd be like, okay, now I know it's possible. Fuck it, I'm just gonna jump. And I'd jump, and, you know, you think you're gonna die. And then hit the water, plunge down, never ever touched the bottom. I mean, those things, I guess, were so deep. Came back up, and it's just this frigid water, because it goes so deep. It's just like this pool that never warms up. And it was so refreshing, because it was like 120 degrees. And it was exhilarating, right? You come back up like, I'm alive. I did it. And this feels amazing.
That's a great memory. So, how much? What made you decide to leave then?
I only had a 4-month visa.
Would you have stayed longer if you had like a 1 year visa?
Well, if I'd had a 1-year visa, which I did actually initially have, and then they revoked it before I left. I think because we screwed over Australians on their visas, they retaliated. So if I'd already left the country, it would have been a year, but because I hadn't yet, because I was working to save some money up for the trip, they shortened it to 4 months. And I'm like, you know, I was going down there to get a job and work and like hang out in another country and like travel on the weekends. And no one would hire me. I mean, no one wanted to hire a fucking Yank, some like American dude. Every one of their friends who's Australian is hitting them up for a job, you know, like the kind of jobs you'd get as a seasonal worker, right? Like working at a hotel, working for a construction company, whatever, working at a bar, restaurant. They just hire if they don't hire their friends, they just hire a sexy girl to bring in customers and hit on, you know? So it's like every girl that I knew, because I'm doing basically like a circuit around Australia. It's like a whole route everyone's doing. You're like, I would see the same people in every stop, or like they'd leave early, I'd leave early, like leapfrogging. Like I met up with a bunch of different people. Like all the women got jobs whenever they wanted. Just like, oh yeah, well we need a waitress. Yeah, come on, you're hired. I'd ask for a job and they'd be like, right. You know. I was looking for a job for a month in Melbourne. And I mean, no one even hired me back. I had a work permit. No one called me back. No one. I had to leave town and be like, all right, well, I guess I'm just going to travel around and have some fun while I'm down here. I might never be here again. It's the other side of the world. And so I just had this mentality that I was just going to travel and just read and write and take pictures and learn things.
What's your best memory of that time?
Well, there was one. So I got to this town where I'd booked a 3-day trip to Fraser Island, which is the world's largest sand island. I guess it's made of sand, but it has these lakes in the island. And because it's all sand, it filters the water. It's crystal, crystal clear. But one of them is surrounded by tea trees, and so it's like tea tree oil water. And so you do these 3-day trips where we were in like this old Land Rover towing a trailer full of camping gear, and you would just like, there were, I don't even know, 8 of us. And they're just like, here are the keys. Go to the store around the corner, get some supplies, and then go here, get on this ferry. Come back in 3 days. And don't break the truck. Right? Like, it was very trusting. I get there to get on this, in this car, and I'm like, there early, and I'm waiting, and I'm waiting, and I'm like, where is everybody? Where is everybody? Turns out I was on the back parking lot and they were in the front parking lot. I was in the front parking lot. They were in the back parking lot. They were all waiting for me, even though I'd been there before they were. And they're just like, oh, you're here. Get in that truck. I'm like, all right. I have my like backpack and I'm just like, here. Jump in the back of this Land Rover and we speed off. And I don't know who any of these people are. And I get to meet them, and it's like 3 Canadian friends who were there for the Olympics that year, working. And they wanted to go on this trip together on this island. And then 2 Belgian girls, 2 other girls, a British couple that always complained about everything, and me. And it was pretty fun, because it was like very different people on this trip, and I had never met anyone from most of those countries, and getting to know them and their customs and like talking to them and being in this beautiful natural surrounding, and it was just very spontaneous feeling. And I actually was became friends with the Canadian guys, and like met up with them and lived with them for a month in Bondi Beach at the end of my trip, where I also did ecstasy for the first time on the beach on New Year's, the year 2000 to 2001. Wild time. I didn't wear shoes for a month. I actually got tan for one of the first times in my life. It faded 2 days later, as it always does, because I'm too Irish. And then the Belgian girls, I went to visit them in Belgium twice after that, because my brother was going to school at the University of Amsterdam, and I went to visit him, and I was like, I should go down and see them in Ghent, in Belgium, and I took the train down, and we hung out, and we didn't sleep for 3 days, just doing ecstasy at night and dancing because all their friends were all the DJs at the dance clubs. And so we would be in their apartment and they'd be playing records and drinking Belgian beer and smoking weed, and then we'd go to the club, we'd take ecstasy, we'd all dance all night, come back to the place, smoke some weed, listen to some records. With the DJs would come from the club, would come to the house and play like an after hours set. And then we just keep doing that, and then drinking beer, and then it's like, oh, well, now it's night again, and then let's have some ecstasy, go dancing, go, and we did that, and I'm just like, I didn't sleep for 3 days, but that was a lot of fun.
So what happened after Australia?
After Australia, I went back to Chicago and didn't know what to do. I applied for a bunch of jobs that I found in the newspaper in the classified section, because that's how old I am. I looked for a job in the newspaper. You know, Google was brand new. I think, Google was like 2001, something. I graduated college in 2000. Like, the internet was like nothing, I mean, it was dial-up internet noises and screeches, and like, here is a page, this is a college, loading, you get an email and it would be almost like getting a telegram or something, like, so rare. No Facebook, none of that. So yeah, it was very different. It changed pretty fast. I think my generation, as being like a shoulder generation, we really, we grew up on the music of the 50s and 60s, and from parents who were born in the 50s, and we just had this like way of life, and then it like really shifted pretty fast in the 90s and early 2000s, and all of a sudden it was like completely different. The internet is everywhere. Everyone has iPhones in their pockets. They're buying things online from people they've never met. Like, the world shifted so fast, and we've seen it all. So for my part, I think I'm more attached to the vintage stuff, like, I like putting on a record. I like writing on paper with my hand. I don't see myself getting like VR goggles and, living in the meta. I'll check it out because I'm curious, but like, I'd rather sit on the porch and stare at the lake and watch the wind blow through the trees, or sit by a fire, watch the flame. That's more enjoyable to me than, I don't know, playing a video game.
Do you want to talk about space travel?
Sure.
Go ahead.
I think it's probably the most fascinating place, or like, I don't know, environment or subject for a movie or a book, right? I just think space travel is the most, like, anything goes, because you can just basically write a story about some guy hating another guy because he likes his girlfriend but she doesn't like him. Some like boring story, right? But now make them astronauts on a spaceship going to some other planet to try to save Earth. And now you've got a story of like what they're doing in this mission and this weird, like, and like, we must do it. But also we can all die at any minute because we're in space. But also we're human. And so the whole mission of this advanced, complicated, crazy important thing is all going to blow up because some guy's mad at some other guy for liking his girlfriend or something, like the interpersonal relationships, because like, you can never fully eliminate the humanity on a space mission, as perfect as you try to make it, and it's all like perfect science and computer control and sensors and whatever. It's like, the whole point of it is to send people somewhere. So you're going to have people in it. And when you have people in it, you have the human factor. it becomes analog again, where it's just like so advanced, but ultimately it all boils down to the people on board and how they interact with each other. And knowing what I know about most people, I don't think I want to be stuck in space with a bunch of people. I don't think it's worth the risk of blowing up trying to get to space. I also don't think it's worth spending $500,000 to spend 3 minutes in orbit, or however much I can imagine they would charge for like a weekend trip to the moon, you know, which I think is something that will probably happen in our lifetime. Maybe in 20 years, people are going to be going to vacation on the moon, or we had our honeymoon on the moon. We did a honeymoon, you know, like 2 nights on the moon, you know. Yes, we did the picture, the selfie with the flag, you know, like it's going to be a whole thing that's just like people going to the moon, but they're going to spend so much money on it, right? And I'm just like, I don't know, you could die, it's a lot of money, I don't need to go to the moon. I'm sure it's cool. You know, I went to the top of Mount Kilimanjaro on my 30th birthday. It was breathtaking. It was an amazing trip, an amazing journey, an amazing sight, but I think that's about as high up as I really need to go.
Man. What are you most proud of?
Well, I was brought into a very young, immature company. Called Paralinks, and then ran that company for 2.5 years and then sold it for multiple millions of dollars. That's probably, I guess, the thing I'm most proud of. And then getting a job at the company that bought us. And they were intending to fire all of us. We were so good, they kept us. And now we're still working there. So it was nice to get a big payoff and then a good job. And I mean, I worked for it all. So it wasn't like it was a gift, but it was good to see it all kind of pay off and keep paying off. Because I definitely had some moments where I wanted to walk away. I'd never done a desk job before. I was always on my feet and moving and working on like event production, film production, anything, you know. I went from like caddying, where I'm walking like 5, 6, 7 miles a day, carrying golf bags, to working on film sets, walking and carrying, and then you're sitting at a desk. I mean, I would have breakdowns in my like shoulders and neck, and just like I never had that. Just from sitting and typing so much. There's so much to do. So I thought about walking away, but eventually stuck with it because I knew it was going to be lucrative. And again, it was like, just kept wanting to get ahead, get a little piece of pie, maybe be able to buy a house. I mean, I never thought I would be able to buy a house. I was never making any money. House prices just skyrocketed. I was living in LA, you know, from like 2003, where, I mean, house prices doubled, I feel like, every like 3 years, you know. I'm living in Silver Lake. This is pretty cool. Maybe I could buy a house here someday. Oh, they were 300,000. Now they're 1 million. Now they're 2 million. Even when I sold the company and I made enough money to buy a house, but I didn't think I did. I was like, it's not enough. Like, it just seems so out of reach. So instead, I bought a car. It's like, I'm going to buy a nice car so that every time I get into my car to go to work, I feel like I'm in the lap of luxury and that it's worth it. And then I realized, oh, I could also buy a house. So then I bought a house. And it turned out to be a great investment. But I just kind of never looked back and just kept working and making some good decisions and some bad decisions. And here we are now.
Is there a hard lesson you learned from then to where you are now?
I guess you have to. I learned to listen to my instincts more.
How so?
With like relationships, especially. Not trying to force something to work. Or think that something's okay when it's not. And that's definitely made me a lot happier. For example, my wife, who I met in LA and knew for many years, and then many years after we met, after we'd both been married and divorced, we reconnected in Las Vegas for a birthday party. It was during the pandemic. I don't know, I guess I'd say mid-pandemic. And we all came to Las Vegas to have a party outside at our friend's place, because 3 people were turning 40 within a couple weeks. And so we had a combo, or within a few days even. So we had a combo birthday party, which is kind of like what I used to do growing up, right? Where it's like 3 people and my uncles and aunts and cousins are having a birthday. We have a party. And we all go to Vegas. And Kelly was there. And I was there. And we met up, and she'll love it if I say it this way, so I'm going to. She kissed me in a Las Vegas nightclub. And now we're married and we have a baby. So, who would have thunk it? Many, many years later, in a totally different city, she had moved to Dallas, I had moved to Raleigh, North Carolina. We both meet up in Las Vegas and reconnect. And I think that's something that's part of the magic of Las Vegas. You know, everyone, for the most part, is going to be here for something, you know. A birthday party, a retirement party, a anniversary, someone's birthday, 4th of July, Saturday, you know, name a reason, right? People just always kind of find their way out here. And things happen that you're not expecting, but like us getting together. But it's great. Like I said, I have a 5-month-old son and a puppy. I come to Las Vegas this time to sleep.
Your son is gonna watch this. What is the best advice you can give him?
Don't be afraid to work hard. Because you should, because you get more when you do. And you should always be curious. You should always want to learn more, explore, see the world, meet people, try new things, try new food. Otherwise, life is pretty boring. And what's the point of that?